Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I know there's a storm on its way, and I know that creates a lot of stress for you gentlemen, but so thank you for being here. Director Cannon, I represent the 139th districts, three wonderful counties in the Northeast, Pike, Wayne, and Monroe counties. And we've had just an enormous amount, I'm just sitting here thinking over probably the last 15 years, an enormous amount of small weather events. We've had tornadoes, we've had ice storms, we've had hurricanes, some isolated and small, some large. But by and large, I mean, we are suffering to reach many times that federal threshold of creating a disaster relief area. For example, if we have a microburst and all of a sudden we have rain of 4 or 5 inches in an hour, we might wipe out several bridges, but we might not reach that threshold of the $17 million. And look, you do a great job of coordinating with my counties. My counties have spent money on technologies, my commissioners. They do great work, and you coordinate that. We appreciate that. We run around trying to identify areas that have been affected, but we sometimes don't reach that $17 million threshold as established by the federal government. I know my senator, Senator Baker, has sponsored Senate Bill 720 with the need for funds for our local governments in these situations where the thresholds are not met. I mean, could you just expand on the process of reaching that $17 million and a little bit on her bill as far as helping some of our municipalities that are, challenged as far as their government budgets as well?
There is every state has a threshold of aggregate damage amounts, and ours was 17.4 million. Excuse me. And because of the size of our state, it's a very difficult number to reach. And there's also a threshold based on per capita for each county to be declared by the federal government. And you expressed it extremely well. There are many, many events where we don't meet the thresholds for the counties. So to be included in a federal disaster declaration, the last July rainstorms that we had and flooding, I think we have a dozen counties that were declared then, and you're in that in your area. But that was extremely difficult to get to, extremely. And to get to the 17.4 million, and while you had a tremendous amount locally, so we had counties that met it. If the state doesn't meet it overall, I can't get those counties declared. At the last moment, as an add-on, Allegheny County came in from the west, and it put us in the money. I would tell you, though, we had a major battle with FEMA because we've got your counties up in the northeast, we've got Allegheny in the southwest, and they tried to tell me that was not the same storm event. That was 2 different storms, which would mean I needed 17.4 twice. But we were able to make that argument with the help of the National Weather Service that we had 1 continuing storm event. But too often, so our numbers high, our numbers difficult, too often we have communities that are devastated. Plymouth Township, I remember just 2 years ago from flooding, didn't meet the per capita. No way would we meet the state, and yet much devastation beyond what the local government was able to handle. And so I'm glad you mentioned Senator Baker's bill. We strongly support the creation of a state disaster fund that can be used to help our communities when we don't meet the federal disaster thresholds. Because without meeting that threshold, there's no way the federal government will give us assistance. It doesn't happen. And there's no other way to turn to in the Commonwealth to help communities like that. And so we started talking with Senator Baker about that bill the very first year that I arrived here. And we are very supportive, hoping that it will move through. Now, I think there's certainly some parameters that we will put in place so that it's not abused in any way, and you will probably have to be denied by the feds before it kicks in. But even when we have some federal support, it's oftentimes not enough to replace the damage that was done, the need. Damage to an individual household, when we can get it, is limited to around $31,000, 31, something like that. that's not enough to replace your house, or or to help you get back on your feet. So we think there's a gap in Pennsylvania by us not having a state disaster fund that can help our communities.
Well, even the situation we're in right now, I mean, there is a salt problem. We've heard it from the southeast. I can tell you from the northeast. I mean, we haven't seen this winter for probably the last 10 years or so, where we've got this much cold and this many snow events, ice events. But just having that money to proactively, we've known the storm's been coming for another days or possibly coming. But if we can't get the salt, we don't have the salt, and we don't have the storage capacity, and our townships are the same way. I mean, they're not preparing. They're preparing a budget based upon their numbers for the last several years. So they're not prepared for these events and these number of events, and now we're caught short with a shortage. I mean, I just think the proactive approach would be also helpful in the bill, and being able to take have that money ready for when it's needed.
Sure. I just want to be clear on the salt issue. It's not that we have not tried to buy and order salt. The salt is not being delivered to us.
Right.
It's the market that's the problem.
Correct, but we all need to probably share a little bit, and because if we need to, borrow some from our friends in other areas, we need to do that, and that's a coordination effort, obviously, that is needed. But bottom line is, we've got townships that just haven't budgeted for it, and they don't have the money for it right now either. So even if they can get it, they don't have the money for it.
That's exactly right.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, and good luck with this storm event.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your work.
Thank you.